because of when we look at the SEC, even looking at last night with Mississippi State knocking off Texas A&M, at this point, are these considered upsets anymore? Because the log jam in the SEC of the top teams or the top half of teams, it can change in any day. And I think that for Missouri, you're probably thinking, all right, well, they had they're on the road again. They're coming to your house. And if you're Alabama, it's okay for everything that went wrong against Auburn and for us to still score 85 points in the midst of a poor performance from shooting the ball. It's like, okay, we can work on these things. Like a couple of shots start to fall, then all of a sudden you're in a different mindset. Like these shots that we had that were, contested. I mean, you're not going to face another team as good as Auburn until you play Auburn again. So you're probably in your mind thinking, okay, we can play this bad and still be this close. Okay, Missouri, maybe not as tough of a challenge, but there's things that, that they can improve on. Think about this. They only turned the ball over 7 times against Auburn, so they're at least taking care of the basketball. At this point, you just got to make shots. And I think for Arkansas, you're in that desperation mode of we need big-time victories. And it's not going to be easy because of the rest of the schedule that you have. And then going into Neville Arena after, Auburn beating number 2, I think for Auburn, you just don't want to have the hangover effect of, okay, we can get comfortable now because we've knocked off Alabama. No, these are the times, these are the moments where you have to continue to assert your dominance as the number 1 team in the nation. And it's going to be an interesting matchup because you think, okay, for Janai Broome, you probably haven't played an athletic big man like you're going to see with Big Z, a guy that can pretty much go tit for tat with you. Now, as far as, the 3-point shot, he's not afraid to put it up. I mean, you go a couple games ago and he's knocked down with 5 threes against Alabama. So it's you can't afford, if you're Auburn, to play your B- game. Because this Arkansas team is scrappy. They're going to try to find a way to make it ugly, make it a fist fight, and they'll try to find a way to win. Because, I mean, again, Coach Cal, he wasn't born yesterday. This man can, no matter how you feel about him, man can still coach. And he has this Arkansas team. Yeah, the record may not reflect it, but they've gone on the road and beaten at Kentucky. They're good enough to go on the road and beat you at Neville Arena. So I think for Auburn, don't get complacent. Don't think that it was the end all be all after you knocked off Alabama on Saturday. You got to follow that up for the rest of the season and to finish strong. And and it starts with this Arkansas game tonight.
Yeah, no, I mean you're absolutely right. You can't overlook anybody. It still feels like, barring some sort of a big, like I guess an emotional letdown or something coming off of the win over Alabama, and maybe you're just kind of gassed mentally from that game. It's just going to be so difficult for Arkansas because, again, I mean, we all know how good Auburn is in playing in Neville Arena. Look, I know Florida beat them there. I know their one loss in conference play this year did come at home, but Florida and Arkansas are a little bit different.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not saying it's not possible because Arkansas obviously has a lot of talent. And, I mean, you brought up what we saw them do against Alabama and make that big comeback and push them essentially to the wire. They're in that game. The big win over Kentucky, obviously. They probably should have beaten Texas A&M over the weekend, but they kind of collapsed in the last few minutes and let them steal that win. So they're certainly capable, but again, I just feel like the further and further along we get in this season, and you look at Auburn, it's just you just kind of throw your hands up and go, yeah, unless they just put up a real stinker of a game, nobody's going to beat them right now. But that's a testament to just how good they are. So it'll be exciting to see. But yeah, I think if you're on the Alabama side of things, you're a little more concerned about this one. And look, I mean, I wouldn't say there's any shame necessarily in going on the road and losing to Missouri, but again, this is a team you are expecting to hold on to that 1 seed, and this is one of those games that you're probably going to need, right? Because you've still got Auburn again. You've got Florida. You've got to go on the road to Tennessee. You've got Kentucky again this weekend, and Kentucky plays their best basketball against top 10 teams. So you've got some challenging ones ahead of you. And when you look at the Missouri game, I would say this is one of those you kind of need to win just because of what is coming ahead for you on the schedule and how difficult it's going to be. But we did have some SEC hoops going on last night. You mentioned it. You did have a top 25 matchup. You had Mississippi State and Texas A&M doing battle. Mississippi State knocks off the Aggies 70-54. Texas A&M had a 1-point lead at halftime, and after that, it was just all Mississippi State and Josh Hubbard. Josh Hubbard goes off for 25 points to lead the way for Mississippi State. And, I think this was a really big, especially coming back to back with the win over Ole Miss and now getting this win over Texas A&M, because I think we've all, if you've seen Mississippi State, you know how good they are, and especially when Hubbard goes off, how good they can be. But it'd been a rough couple of weeks for them, picking up, adding a couple losses here in SEC play and just kind of hitting that rough patch. And now you bounce back with 2 back-to-back wins over top 25 teams. That'll play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think for Mississippi State, this is a situation where it's all about building confidence in the backstretch of the season. Like, these are pivotal games the rest of the way for teams like Mississippi State who want to improve their seeding in the NCAA tournament, kind of, set the scene for them in the SEC tournament as well, depending on where they finish. But I think that knowing that you've knocked off a top 10 team in Texas A&M, you start to build confidence. Like, just the SEC as a whole is continuing to show why they have been the best conference in basketball because of games like this. Because at this point, it doesn't even matter where you rank, because any team can knock you off on any given game. And I think for Mississippi State, because we had seen, Josh Hubbard has been pretty much the most exciting basketball player outside of Janai Broome in the SEC, because he's going out and putting up points game in and game out. And you want players like that to step up in games like this. And for Texas A&M, it's like they couldn't buy a shot. And, for that to be up by 1 at halftime and then kind of dwindle there in the second half, it was a lot to do with Mississippi State. One, that the crowd they were locked in. Like, I will say this, for pretty much every good team in the SEC, when they play at home, it's pretty exciting. Mm-hmm. And I think that gave them an edge on top of, Texas A&M struggling shooting the ball and not being able to finish. But a lot of credit goes to Mississippi State and the way that they defended them. And again, Josh Hubbard, he's a firecracker. Like, if you are going to beat Mississippi State, you've got to neutralize Josh Hubbard. And Texas A&M couldn't do it, and he erupted for 25 points last night, and that's how Mississippi State ends up knocking them off.
Yeah, you also had the new number 2 team in the country, the Florida Gators. They were at home, and they took on Oklahoma and absolutely wiped the floor with them. It was close in the second half. Close in the second half in the sense that after halftime, they were pretty much even, but Florida went up, 23, 24, something like that at halftime, and that was essentially all she wrote. And again, it's just more, I'm not going to say I feel bad for Oklahoma in their first year in the league, but again, it's just kind of a reminder of, they've had, obviously started off undefeated, then they go into conference play, start off on a 3 or 4 game losing streak, and they started to pick up some steam, and now they're, kind of running out of gas here towards the end of the way. And I would think, again, a 20-plus point loss. They were on the bubble already. I think Lenardi still had them as one of his last 4 in. I would imagine they're now on the outside looking in. So that, they've got some, they've got ground to make up. They've got opportunities. They've still got, they've got to play Kentucky. They've got to play Ole Miss. They got to play Missouri. They got Texas again. Like, they've got some opportunities against teams that are going to be in the tournament. But definitely been a bit of a rough year in the SEC for Oklahoma. But Florida gets a big win last night. And then in the game that I'm sure nobody watched, I'll be honest, I didn't watch it.
Didn't see a single second.
Yeah. The bottom of the barrel bowl is what we're going to call it for the SEC. But you had South Carolina and LSU, the 2 worst teams in the league this year. And, hey, credit to LSU. They are officially not the worst team in the SEC. I think we knew that already with South Carolina being undefeated or winless in conference play. But, LSU gets to win 81-67, and a couple of days after they announced they're bringing back their head coach.
Exactly.
Which was, I think, maybe a little surprising to some of us. Hey, good to go out there and get a win. Don't think they're going to find themselves back on the bubble or anything after that win.
Nah.
But, hey, it's a win is a win. And, man, if you're South Carolina, maybe your hope is that you're Missouri next year, because if you remember, Missouri won 0 games in the SEC last year, and now they're a top 25 team and in a lock to make the tournament. But, if you're South Carolina, all right, you got Texas at home this weekend. Then you got to go to Missouri.
Oh, boy.
You host Arkansas, you host Georgia, and then you go to Tennessee to wrap up the season. I guess Georgia at home, I would look at that and circle that as your best opportunity to
get one.
But yeah, the clock's ticking on the season if you were planning on getting a win in conference play. So yeah, I feel feel bad for Lamont Paris and those guys. It's been ugly.
It has, and even if you look at LSU and the way that they finished, they're at home against Florida, they're at home against Tennessee, on the road against Mississippi State, then Kentucky, and then they finish things off with Texas A&M. So, it was fun. It was fun, and if you're Matt McMahon, it's like, hey, you got paid, you won the next game after you got paid, and that may be the last one that you get, but. Yeah, the bottom of the SEC, it's very evident who is not going to be participating in the NCAA tournament. And I guess, like you said, if you look at it from the Missouri perspective, it's like, hey, it's not that bad. You know, you can turn this thing around in 1 year. Probably have to attack the transfer portal mighty heavily.
The power of NIL. That's what Missouri did.
You can turn this thing around. Same for South Carolina.
Well, same thing for LSU, man. You got money.
Obviously, because you just paid Matt McMahon. It's like, hey, you're building something. Now, what are you building? I could not tell you, but you're trending upward. It can't get any worse from this point forward.
Well, hopefully not.
It can.
Not for South Carolina.
Yeah, right. So you just build this thing on up. And maybe next year that you can find yourself in a Missouri spot. And speaking of Missouri, they got Alabama tonight. And Auburn takes on Arkansas.
Oh, and it's a fun one tonight. They both played the same time again. If
you know it, the old 8 o'clock tip off for the SEC. One game is on the SEC Network. That'll be Alabama and Missouri. And on ESPN, you've got Arkansas and Auburn. We'll take a look at those games tonight. What you want to see from your teams? You want Alabama. If you're an Alabama fan, you want to see Alabama turn this thing around, make some shots, just solidify themselves as like, hey, this is the backstretch of the season. You want to make sure you're trending upward and not having the slumps that you had against Auburn. And for Auburn, you want to see your team keep the momentum? Want to hear from you. 205-834-9450. Your text messages, your calls, always welcome here on Morning JOX. And we'll take a look at the games tonight. We'll return here on JOX 94.5. 6:18 here on Morning JOX. JOX 94.5, Damian Mitchell, Conrad Van Order, and of course you as well, our wonderful listeners, 205-834-9450. SEC in action last night as we went down the list and we discussed, LSU and South Carolina, which is the bottom of the barrel game. LSU knocks off South Carolina 81-67. Florida beats up on Oklahoma 85-63. And the Mississippi State Bulldogs knocked off the Texas A&M Aggies 70-54. And then tonight, of course, Alabama hits the road to take on the Missouri Tigers. Auburn welcomes Arkansas at home. And at 6 o'clock on the SEC Network, Vanderbilt takes a trip to Lexington, Kentucky to take on the Kentucky Wildcats. Could be a sneaky game.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen Vanderbilt pull off some upsets. I mean, hell, they've beaten them already. So, this is a little bit of a revenge game for Kentucky. See if they can get it done there in Rupp Arena. But we know the action tonight. Again, both the games will be tipping off at 8 o'clock. Auburn taking on Arkansas. Alabama on the road in Missouri. 205-834-9450. Somebody texts in and says, I want to see Alabama dialed in and back to shooting well.
I think that's what we all want to see. Closer to the Texas game than what we got in the Auburn game. I did want to pass this along, though, because, Nate Oates he met with the media yesterday and just kind of previewing the game a little bit. But Darion Reed probably not going to play. He said that he re-aggravated a hamstring injury in the Auburn game. And so he's getting an MRI. And it doesn't sound like we're going to see him for a couple games, probably. Yeah. But that's unfortunate because I thought he started off the year pretty well as a freshman. And then, he's been hurt all throughout the year, and it's just kind of derailed his season at times. So hopefully he's able to get 100% and be good to go for postseason play. But don't expect him tonight. The other one is Cliff Amore. He is questionable for tonight, dealing with a little bit of an injury. So just another thing to keep an eye on, because if he's out, obviously, that's a big rim presence right there that's going to be gone for Alabama. So just something to keep in mind if you're, maybe if you're particularly inclined to put a friendly wager or something on the game, that's the more you know.
Absolutely. Alan takes in. He says, I want to see Alabama stay the course. How many teams in the country can beat Alabama when they shoot that badly and still score in the mid-80s? Auburn is one of the top defensive teams in the country, shut down the three ball, and we still found a way to keep the game interesting. We kept Auburn off the offensive glass. It was just a poor shooting night. Live by the three, die by the three. Roll, Tide, roll, blue-collar team.
Yeah, I think that's the big question is, and you brought it up earlier, you did a lot of things well in the Auburn game in the sense of, you out-rebounded them overall. You doubled them up on the offensive glass. You only had 7 turnovers. A lot of these smaller things, the things that you needed to do well in that game to win, I thought Alabama actually did those things. They just didn't shoot the ball well. And so now the question is, all right, let's say you go out there and have a good shooting performance. Okay, that's great, but are you now turning the ball over 15 times again, right? Are you able to... the adjustments that you made and the areas that you improved against Auburn, are you now able to carry that forward with you? And then when you pair that with a night where you shoot 40-something% from three-point range, that's going to be great. But can you do that, right? Or are you going to get back into some of those old habits? I think that's a big question for Alabama.
Yeah, and that's the thing, man. This Missouri team, they're a scrappy bunch, and they've been pretty good this season. Again, they're ranked number 15, and you go back to last season, you would think, okay, well, if all it took was for us to go winless in the SEC, for us to be, a top 15 team the next season, you're like, okay, well, we'll get those lumps back in 2023, 24, and then going into 2025, it's like, okay, we're trending upward. And I think that this Missouri team, of course, again, you get them at home. The biggest thing for Alabama, you're on the road. It's already tough to win in the SEC on the road as it is. It's just now you can't afford to have another shooting performance like you did against Auburn. You got to have that shooting performance that you had against Texas, where it felt like everything that you put up was going in.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And this is a Missouri team that's good at turning the ball over, forcing teams to turn the ball over. When you look at them defensively, they're giving up 10 points per game less than Alabama is. Alabama, I don't know if this is going to surprise anybody, but they allow the most points per game in the entire SEC. They also score the most points in the conference, so that's kind of where that helps you out. But, Missouri's no slouch. They're averaging over 82 points a game. They're giving up around 69. Alabama's scoring 90 a game and giving up 79. So, again, it's just going on the road in a tough environment. If they can get in a little bit of a rhythm and, whether it's causing Alabama turnovers or the cold shooting performance carries over from the Auburn game, It can be tricky. They're going to be scrappy, and they got some dudes that can come in and rain some threes. I know Grill coming off the bench. We were interviewing Eli Hoff, who covers Missouri, yesterday on 3-Man Front. He just didn't have enough good things to say about Caleb Grill and some of the other veteran guys they have on this team that can just go in there and shoot it lights out. And they're similar to, they're not nearly as deep as Alabama or Auburn, but they're at a similar situation where they got 3 or 4 guys that any given night can be their leading scorers. So Alabama's going to have their work cut out for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you look at the Auburn side of things when they're matchup with Arkansas tonight. And the thing about Arkansas is it's year one under Coach Cal. And early on, especially in SEC play, it just seemed like they were just trying to figure it all out. Like it kept game by game. You saw pieces or you saw glimpses of, okay, well, they can kind of trend in a good direction. Then you go up to Rupp Arena, knock off a Kentucky team that, I mean, pretty much all eyes were on y'all that day. And you look like the better team. So you have it in, like they have it in them, but it's how can they're almost like South Carolina in football. You're right there and you've shown glimpses of, okay, this can be great, but you've also shown glimpses of this can be absolutely terrible as far as just your inconsistency on how you play. But again, like you got the #1 team in the nation. You got to throw all your punches out. And Coach Cal is a good enough coach that he can find ways to kind of, neutralize things. But I think a lot of it has to do with Auburn makes mistakes than it would that Arkansas is just going to go into Neville Arena and pull off the upset. I think Auburn's going to have to beat themselves up a little bit more to aid into Arkansas pulling off an upset. I don't really see it happening, but I do think they kind of match up well with Auburn enough. But I think Auburn is just so deep that whatever 5 is out there, it's like, oh my gosh, like here comes Tahad Pettifer off the bench. Here comes Chad Baker-Mazara off the bench. It's like, okay, well, where are we going to find our points as the Razorbacks when we can't stop what Auburn is doing when they just reload with the 5 that they have on the floor?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely just feels like a game where, again, if Arkansas, plays better than they normally do and Auburn plays worse than they normally do, maybe there's something there. You brought him up earlier. You probably need a guy like a Visich to come in and light it up from 3.
Yeah.
You need Thero to continue to do his thing, and you probably you're gonna need Auburn to get into foul trouble, I think, and that's somewhere that, if you're Arkansas, you can try to even the playing field a little bit, down the stretch of, as deep as Auburn is. I mean, we saw it in the game the other night, right? With situations, Chad Baker-Mazara, he's the way that he plays, like you just never know on a given night. Like he's definitely going to stack up some fouls at times. Cardwell fouled out the other night. Arkansas, if you play a physical version of basketball, and that's another thing I think you could maybe take away from the Alabama game was, especially in the second half, I mean, Alabama was just attacking the rim. It was essentially, all right, you're not going to give us anything from 3. Well, we're just going to try to draw as many fouls as possible. And if we have to take some contested 2s along the way, so be it. But we're not going to let up, and it honestly worked fairly well for them at times. Granted, you needed more from the outside, and defensively you couldn't get stops when you needed, so it didn't matter. But if you're Arkansas, maybe that's your game plan going in is, all right, let's attack Auburn at the rim. Maybe we knew Janai wasn't 100% going into the Bama game, then he tweaks his ankle. I mean, it seems like he's fine, but maybe that's an area you try to attack if he's not 100%, and you think maybe that's something you could exploit a little bit. So, it is one of those games where everything would have to go right for Arkansas, it feels like, and a lot of things would have to go wrong for Auburn. If it was in Fayetteville, maybe it'd be a little bit different, but yeah, Neville's it's a different beast. And I mean, you got to think that's your first home game after the win over Alabama.
Oh, yeah.
The fan base is going to be rocking, excited to welcome you back. After the big win, I think the atmosphere is going to be great. So, yeah, best of luck, Coach Cal.
Yeah,
anything's positive. It's why there's a reason we play the games and we don't just talk about them. But yeah, it seems
it's just trending
uphill battle.
Yeah, and right now, again, if you are into the wagering side of things for entertainment purposes only, Auburn right now is a 16.5-point favorite. So just do with that information as you wish.
And on the flip side, Alabama's actually an underdog tonight. So if that's the position that you like for the Tide to be in, have a little chip on their shoulder, Missouri's a 1.5-point favorite right now at home. So,
and again, for entertainment purposes.
Yeah.
Just if you got couple dollars in your pocket that you can play with.
Of course.
Might sprinkle a little something on Alabama if they're the underdog.
I was about to say, I think there's some people that might find that pretty appealing,
Right.
a bounce back performance for Alabama, but
We call that value.
we'll see.
There's some value there.
Mhm.
Just
Could
a
be.
little wagering jargon. 205-834-9450. We'll continue with your text messages, your calls on Morning Jocks. Keep it locked right here on Jocks 94.5. .632 here on Morning Jocks. Jocks 94.5, Damian Mitchell alongside Conrad Van Order. And of course you, our wonderful listeners, 205-834-9450. Text line, phone lines, always open here on Morning Jocks. Just breaking down what we expect to see tonight as Auburn takes on Arkansas. Alabama hits the road to take on Missouri. Both of those games at 8 p.m. So you're going to be switching back and forth. Or if you got dual split screen, you can have them both playing at the same time. It'd be kind of difficult, but it's possible. Auburn at home on ESPN, taking on the Arkansas Razorbacks, and Alabama on the road on SEC Network, taking on the Missouri Tigers. And we got some text messages. And somebody texted in and says, want to see Bama's defense more consistent in the second half. Been bad for us. Roll Tide roll. And he says, I enjoy listening to the show every morning. Been listening a long time. We appreciate you.
Yeah, no, we do appreciate that. I'm glad he brought that up, actually, because this was something that I thought was really, really interesting that Nick Kelly put out yesterday for the Alabama or for AL.com. So he put together a chart, and it essentially goes through SEC play for Alabama, and he measured essentially how good they were defensively in the first half of their games versus the second half in SEC play based on points per possession allowed. And the bad news, if you're an Alabama fan, is that statistically speaking, the worst second half you had in terms of most points per possession allowed was Saturday against Auburn. The other bad news is that there's only been one game this year where Alabama played better defensively in the second half than the first half, and that was the LSU game, which, to be fair, was closer than it probably should have been, so you needed it in that game. So maybe that makes it more impressive that they're 10-2 in SEC play, but I would say that's maybe something that's going to have to change. Granted, at this point in the season, it's cliche, but you kind of are who you are. But we've heard Nate Oates after just about every game that Alabama's played this year saying, yeah, we got to figure something out with the second half defense. I mean, we've seen him throw out a different starting five to start the second half sometimes just because he wants a little bit of a spark, and for whatever reason, whatever they tried to do just... it hasn't worked. So yeah, I'm with the texter. Like, we need to see Alabama step it up in the second half. And, if you get out to a big lead, that's great, but can you hold on to it, right? Because it just feels like in a lot of these games where, maybe at the end of the day, you look back and go, it wasn't really that in doubt at any point, but they have a tendency to let teams kind of make a little run and make things more interesting than they should at the end of games.
Absolutely. Fanboy takes in and says, Bama still has a defensive problem as the past couple of years. Yeah, I mean, when the pace in which they play offensively, you get a little winded on the defensive side, but that's when you need to give the most effort, because on the offensive side, it's just, hey, whoever's got the 3-point shot, take it. You can get to the rim. It's even better.
Yeah, and I think it's just frustrating. It's frustrating for me, and I think a lot of fans, is when Nate Oates came to Alabama and he was still kind of putting his print on the program and his identity and how he liked things to be played. Before he had all those pieces in place, Alabama was really good defensively. Like, that was kind of his thing, was just how stout Alabama was defensively. And that's how they won a lot of games early on in his tenure. And, of course, it helps when you have certain guys like, your Herb Jones and guys like that that were a part of the program at that time. But, I think that's where it's just a little head-scratching. It was last year, I think we could have all looked at and said, last year was just kind of a weird year for the team. They didn't meet expectations. Then they go on this magical run to the Final Four. But defensively, they were pretty bad last year. And they've been better this year. But they're still not where they need to be. Because you just look at a team like Auburn, and while, okay, yeah, they're averaging, 4 or 5 points less per game than Alabama, they tend to be more efficient when they're shooting the ball. And then defensively, they're one of the better teams in the country. And that's what makes them so great is, Alabama... as great as it was that they struggled to shoot the ball well the other night and scored 85, you still let Auburn score over 90, right? If you're better defensively, you could probably win that game scoring 85 points. But based on how they have been defensively the last couple of years, like you mentioned, it has not been anything like it was when Nate Oates first came over, and they got to figure that out moving forward.
Absolutely. Drake texted in. He says he's a big Florida fan, as we know. He says, guys, both Florida and Auburn are similar. Both have good guard play, and both have good guard play. Both are big and deep, and I can see either one of these teams win the national title. Yeah.
Auburn and Florida, yeah.
I agree with you 100%. And I think that, we've seen Florida go into Neville Arena. They're the only team that have done it. They've gone into Neville Arena and knock off Auburn. And I mean, like, that was kind of like the turning point for Florida. It's like, okay, well, I think the question mark was, okay, are they kind of in that log jam of good SEC teams, or are they going to ascend to great? And then when they went to Auburn and knocked off Auburn, I mean, they just straight up beat them, man.
Mm-hmm.
Janai Broome struggled. They added the pressure, especially that second half when, like, the end of the first half going into the second half where they were just, they could not miss. And I think that's kind of been their recipe, and they've shown that, like, to his point, they're deep just like Auburn is too. And I think that for both teams, they do have a chance of winning a national title. It's going to be a fun run. And that's the thing about the NCAA tournament. It's all about who you match up with too.
Mm-hmm.
So that plays a lot into it. But I do think that both of these teams could. I would not be surprised if they're one of the next one of the final 8 to 4 teams playing for a national championship.
Yeah, I think them and I think Alabama. So I think those 3 teams of Auburn, Florida, and Alabama. Those are the 3 that I look at and say, I think you can win a national championship this year out of the SEC. I'm not there with,
Tennessee's too inconsistent.
They are, and I mean, again, with them, it's just, I mean, we've never even seen Rick Barnes make a Final Four. Now, maybe this year is the year that happens, but, I could see Tennessee making a Final Four. I think they're good enough, depending on the path they get in the tournament, and if they're playing their best ball at the right time, sure, I could see that. Same thing with Kentucky, with how good they are offensively, right? And they played their best basketball against better competition. So I could see, there's teams I could see making a run to the Final Four if everything goes right for them. But I think Auburn, Florida, and Alabama are the only teams that I could see winning a national championship. But again, a lot of that, we don't know what the brackets are going to look like and what region they're going to be, what teams they're going to have to go up against on the way to a Final Four. But yeah, I think those 3 they have a higher ceiling than everybody else in the league.
Absolutely. 205-834-9450. Your text message, your call is always welcome. Speaking of Auburn, let's talk to our resident Auburn fan, Don, who wants to talk some ball with us this morning. What's going on, Don?
Hey, good morning, guys. Before we talk a little basketball, good to see both of y'all yesterday at Social Taco. And I want to thank Jox and you guys. We've turned that into a family up there, fellas, and I thank y'all for that.
We are, we're just glad that y'all show up every Tuesday, Don. We thought after the first one it would just kind of die out, and here we are, 2 years later, and it's turned into a, like you said, kind of like a family thing on Tuesdays. So it's always a good time.
Absolutely, and everything. I even lost my shoe coming up the stairs yesterday.
Man, we told you got to stop drinking before you come up to the taco place.
No. I need to clarify that there, my friend, because I don't want people out there thinking that. I haven't had a drink in 5 years.
I'm messing with you, Don.
I know, but I think you guys know I got 2 half feet, and that's why my shoes come off sometimes.
That's all right. So how are you feeling about the game tonight in Neville, Don?
To be honest with you, and Damien had a good point. Now we better be ready to play. I can tell you that.
So you're going to predict a Arkansas upset?
No. Before okay. Damien gets on me and everything, Auburn's going to win the game, but I don't think they'll cover that 16.5 point. I think it'll be a closer game than that.
Okay,
it's a lot of points.
Yes, it's a thick number.
But hey, by the way, guys, I know I talked to y'all the other day about Denver Jones. He was named the National Player of the Week yesterday.
I saw that. It was very, very impressive.
Congratulations.
Yeah. And Conrad, buddy, I'm kind of surprised y'all are an underdog. What is the points on that?
1.5 for Missouri right now. So I guess people are maybe expecting a little bit of a hangover from the Auburn loss, and like I mentioned earlier, it looks like Cliff Amore might not go, and Darion Reed's going to be out. So yeah.
Wow.
Y'all banged us up, Don. Y'all hurt our players.
No. Listen, I'm going to tell you something, guys. And I know Auburn's rated number 1 right now, but guys, right now, at this moment right now, I think Florida's the best team in the country.
No.
Are you just saying that because they beat Auburn?
Right. Just no.
But they didn't. They
you don't
dominated
believe that.
us.
You don't believe.
They dominated us.
You don't believe that. Now, how are you going to have the number 1 team in the nation?
How much did Bruce Pearl pay you to call in here and say that to motivate the fan base?
You think Florida's the best team in the nation right now?
Well, they're well, okay. If they're not number 1, they're definitely right behind us in the second best.
Make up your mind. Are you really an Auburn fan? Like it's starting to you're starting to puzzle me a little bit.
Come on, my friend, don't do that.
Well, you're the one that said that Florida's the best team in the nation right now. I'm just trying to figure out how do you have the number 1 team in the nation and still not believe they're the number 1 team in the nation?
Well, can I ask you a question? Does it mean anything right now?
I mean, I guess not, but I know when I look at the AP poll, Auburn is number 1 in the nation, even with the loss to Florida. But you're going to tell me that Florida's the best team in the nation right now? It's not. It's not making much sense.
Well, they are playing very good right now.
So you're not confident in this number one team in the nation. That's what you're saying. You're not confident that Auburn is the best team in college basketball.
Not completely. We're beatable.
And Florida's not?
Well, they've lost. Okay, they're 23-3. We're 23-2.
I'm just trying to make it make sense, bro. I'm puzzled. Like, how you have the number one team. Like, you are the number one team, and then believe that Florida's the best team in the nation right now. All because they beat you, man. But what'd you do to the number two team on Saturday? You boat raced them. Come on, man. Make it make sense. Let's continue on the phone lines, 205-834-9450. Conrad, prepare yourself. He says it's Bennett, but I need to make sure. Bennett, is this you?
Yes, it is.
Good.
Who is this?
I don't know. I mean, you turn 15 and your voice just goes like down.
Man, how's it going, buddy?
It's going good. Wait, were y'all at Soho Taco last night?
We were there yesterday, around lunchtime, a little after that.
Lunchtime? Don must have had a lot to drink because it's still not completely worn off. I don't know what he's talking about. Because, look, Florida is good. They're really good, and they beat us. So Florida's got 3 losses, and our 2 losses are to the number 2 team in the country, then the number 3 team in the country, Duke, who are both really good teams. But I think you have, like, literally the best resume you could have with 2 losses. And I don't understand how you can put a 3-loss team in front of that, especially with what we just did on Saturday. But
well, you're a true Auburn fan,
I was kind of calling it. I hadn't called in a minute.
Yeah, trust me, we are shocked, man. It's this is not the Bennett that we grew up with. It's like, wait a minute, who is this grown man on the phone?
Yeah, well, like I said, you get older, voice goes down. I'm kind of waiting for it to stop, and it really hasn't. And I don't really know when it's gonna stop. So,
man, Bennett, it's always good to hear from you, man. Hey, War Eagle.
War Eagle.
Man. We're old.
They grow up so fast.
They grow up so fast. Like, wait a minute, this is the same Bennett they used to call in, and man, now he's War Eagle. Okay, big dog. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, my brother. Like, I was unfamiliar with your game, big dog. Like you said, when you turn 15, everything just changes, boy. They grow up so fast. 205-834-9450. We'll continue with your text message, your calls here on Morning JOX and JOX 94.5. Who's this?
Arctic Monkeys.
Got a nice little vibe to it.
Yeah, I wouldn't have expected you to know that one.
No, I'm not too familiar. I will say, not too familiar with their work.
No, they're good though.
Is this like their most popular song?
No, this isn't their most popular song. It's probably the most popular album though.
Okay. What's their most popular song?
Let's see. What song has the most let's see. It's called I Wanna Be Yours. It has like 3 billion streams. So they're pretty, yeah, I mean, they're pretty fairly popular.
Oh, okay. If they were coming to Legacy Arena or Protective Stadium, would you go see them?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
But you wouldn't do it for Kenny Chesney. That's wild.
What is that? What does that have to do with anything?
I thought you rock with Kenny Chesney too.
He's fine. I don't listen to country music though.
Oh yeah, I forgot. Yeah. So why don't you like Florida Georgia Line then? Since they say they're not
because they just
country?
make bad music.
I wouldn't say that, but I just. But they say they're not country. You don't listen to country, so I thought that would.
Then what are they? Bad pop?
No. They were a great duo. They were like the Outkast of country music. What? When Outkast first hit the scene, they were like,
That
this
was
is a little
wild.
different. Like, this is a little different. They were different than most groups.
Yeah, the South got something to say. Is that was that from Florida Georgia Line? Is that where that line came from?
I'm just saying, they changed the game. They were game changers. Pioneers, if you would say.
Okay.
You didn't like that one, did you?
No, I didn't. That was bad, and I hope there's a lot of people out there that are texting. I hope you didn't cause anybody to drive off the road or anything like that. But hey, teach their own.
Oh, man, nothing but love here on Morning JOX. JOX 94.5, Damian Mitchell, alongside Conrad Van Order. Just having some fun this morning. We got a chance to hear from our buddy Don Don, who made the claim that he thinks Florida is the best team playing basketball right now in college hoops, and he says he's an Auburn fan, and Auburn's the number 1 team in the nation. I know Florida did beat them, but to each its own. Somebody texts in and says, this ain't football, Don Don. Auburn dominates basketball. Exactly. Somebody said, tell Don Don that Auburn didn't get beat by 20 by any team this year. Florida did. That's a fact. Oh boy. Hey, okay. See, this is where we're going. Conrad, somebody texts in and says, I agree with Damian. Florida Georgia Line is the go to the 2010s country music. They just don't want to listen. They don't want to give them the flowers while they're separated now, but they don't want to give them the flowers while they're here. It's crazy. I know I ain't tripping. And for everybody who wants to get mad about Kendrick Lamar halftime show, I bet you would have enjoyed a Florida Georgia Line halftime show. I know that for a fact.
No.
They have a party, man. You ever been to a Florida Georgia Line concert?
No.
Didn't think so.
Thank God I've never been to a Florida Georgia Line concert.
Haters, man. Y'all just some haters. And Lance takes in. He says, Pioneers, bro. He's like, what? Listen, man. Just do a deep dive into them. Listen to their B-sides.
I can't think of anything I would rather do less than listen to Florida Georgia Line deep
Y'all just
cuts.
some haters, dog.
Granted, I'll give you credit. They can't be any worse than the songs that we all know. So maybe there's something to that.
Yeah, you just a hater, man. I've never understood this. I don't understand it.
There's just certain things that I'm like, I will never like that. And I can confidently say that I think Florida Georgia Line is just not for me.
It's all good.
Just not for me. That's why they're so successful and they're still together and making music, right?
Listen, man, the pandemic kind of threw a wrench in a lot of people's they realized they could probably make better music separately, or at least one of them did, and kind of leaned that way. Somebody texting and
Sure,
says,
their 12 fans were really tore up about that.
I was one of those 12, and yes, I was. I've seen both of them individually in concerts, and I was like, in my mind, I was like, no. They make better music together. Why is everybody just a hater? Oh my God. Conrad, somebody texted in and says Conrad's too metro for Florida Georgia Line. He's just a hater. But y'all listen to Arctic Monkeys and all that stuff.
You said you liked it.
That one song.
Yeah, don't you think if you like that one song that it probably means there's other songs that might also
the same
be
way
good?
with Florida Georgia Line.
Yeah, but I don't like any of their songs.
That should be
that's the kicker.
That should be your off-season music project. That should be your off-season music project. You should listen to. I should give you a list of Florida Georgia Line songs that you need to listen to, and I promise you, it will change your perspective. You'll be like, "Hey, they actually have some good ones." You're a big Taylor Swift guy.
No, I'm not.
Oh,
that's you, brother.
I'm just a Reputation album Taylor Swift fan. All the rest of them, like, the Torture Pose department wasn't bad.
No, I mean she's got some good songs, but
yeah, same with Florida.
Just like listen to her.
Absolutely.
This didn't go the way you thought it was.
It did not,
and that's fine.
It did not.
We all got to be humbled at some point.
It hurts. It hurts. But I think that's the fun part of growth. Sometimes it just takes a little pain.
It's just how we roll.
See, another banger. See, they could have done that without Luke Bryan. I'm not the biggest Luke Bryan fan.
No.
Oh.
No.
They got songs with Jason Aldean, Nelly, Jason Derulo, Haley Steinfeld.
You are not helping yourself.
I'm
the
just
more
saying, they are game changers. They're game changers, man.
Yeah, let me make sure I go listen to that Florida Georgia Line Jason Derulo song. Yeah, that's really excited for that one.
It's a song for the women. It's actually titled Women, too. You should just dive into it, man. Look at that. Chris texts in and says, can't be some Florida Georgia Line at the beach. Come on, man. The vibes are there. They're immaculate.
We are in a radio studio.
Mac and Cube in the morning. They're next.